Jason Miller stepped out of the elevator, his Italian loafers clicking softly against the polished hardwood floor of the top-level suite. The air was still, cool, professional, just as he liked it. He cradled his morning espresso in one hand, steam curling upward like a quiet ritual. It was 6:07 a.m., 38 minutes before anyone else was due to arrive. Just how he preferred it. Silence was the only loyal business partner he had left. But this morning, the silence was different. As he unlocked the door to his private office, he felt something shift, not physically, but almost metaphysically. Like a string had been plucked in the universe. He pushed the heavy glass door open, and then he froze. There, curled up together in his prized leather chair, the one no one was allowed to sit in, not even Grace, were two small boys. Fast asleep. Their knees tucked up, their hands folded like tiny birds at rest, their chests rising and falling in quiet, rhythmic waves. Jason didn't move. His breath caught halfway in his chest. His first instinct was confusion. Then irritation. Then something else, something older, deeper. That chair, that damn chair was a symbol. A throne. No intern, no investor, no assistant ever dared sit there. And yet these two children, barefoot, wearing mismatched t-shirts, one with a tear near the hem, were sleeping in it like it was a mother's lap. He stepped closer. They couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Twins, from the looks of it. One had a cowlick that curled into his eyebrow. The other had a slight dimple in his chin. But it was their eyes, closed now, but unmistakable in the morning light, that made Jason stumble. Blue. That exact, impossible shade of blue. His shade. His throat tightened. Behind him, the door creaked again. Grace's voice followed. Jason, I didn't know they were here until just now. The security guard called me. Jason turned, still dazed. What the hell is this? Grace held out a single folded sheet of paper. This was left on your desk. He snatched it without thinking, his fingers stiff. The handwriting was delicate. Feminine. Something in his gut twisted before his eyes even focused. It read. Please protect them. They belong to you. The words burned into him. Not metaphorically. Literally. Like they were etched into his chest, not paper. He sat down slowly, across from the chair, his chair, and stared. The boys didn't stir, except for a small twitch from the one with the cowlick. Jason read the note again, now noticing the signature at the bottom. Just one word. Emily. Time slipped. His coffee went cold in his hand, unnoticed. Outside, the city woke up, the honk of early cabs, the low hum of elevators, the distant bark of a dog on a high-rise balcony. But inside that room, Jason was back in another decade, another version of himself. He hadn't heard that name, Emily Carter, in years. And he had tried very, very hard to keep it that way. Emily, he whispered, as if the word might wake ghosts. Or dreams. The smaller boy stirred. Jason leaned forward involuntarily. Still half asleep, the boy mumbled, "That's Mommy." Jason's heart dropped so fast it made him dizzy. There was a crack in the air now. A fault line opening beneath the life he had built so carefully. Power. Order. Control. And yet here, in a worn leather chair worth more than most cars, were two pieces of a truth he'd buried, and they were sleeping peacefully. His mouth was dry. His fingers trembled. For once, Jason Miller, CEO of Miller International Holdings, didn't have a single prepared response. Only questions. Who brought them here? Why now? And why him? But deep beneath the panic, beneath the denial and the precision he had weaponized for years, something else began to rise. A flicker of memory. A soft laugh in the dark. A woman who once looked at him like he was worth saving, even when he didn't believe it himself. Grace, he said, still staring at the boys. Find out everything. How they got here. Who let them in? I want answers. Yes, Mr. Miller, she said quietly. But she didn't move. Jason turned to her, eyebrows raised. Her voice was softer now. Jason. Look at them. He did. Really looked. 2 little boys. One with a scratch on his knee. The other hugging a threadbare teddy bear like it held the whole world together. They looked like him. No. They were him. 39 years ago. Lost. Small. Waiting for someone who never came back. Jason blinked hard, his throat tightening again. The leather squeaked as the older twin stretched and blinked open one eye. Blue. Just like his. Are you my daddy? The boy asked. Jason couldn't speak. The morning sun spilled into the room, warm and indifferent. Outside, the world turned. Inside, Jason Miller sat in silence, his entire life rearranged in a single breath. Are you my daddy? The boy asked. Jason couldn't speak. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was Emily's. Jason sat motionless at his desk. The morning had unraveled into something surreal, like he'd stepped sideways into a dream he wasn't ready for. The note sat in front of him, its ink trembling slightly in the light breeze from the air vent above. He had read it 5 times. 10. It didn't change. Please protect them. They belong to you. Emily. The boys were in the lounge now, coloring quietly on the coffee table with markers Grace had somehow scrounged up. They didn't seem frightened. Just tired. Trusting. Jason couldn't decide if that calmed him or made it worse. He stared out the window, down at the city that once made him feel invincible. But today, even the skyline looked fragile. Grace stood near the door, hands clasped, waiting. He finally spoke. How did they get in? She swallowed. The night guard didn't see anyone. No alerts, no unusual entries in the log. Jason turned slowly toward her. We're on the 32nd floor. They didn't fly up here. No, sir. But, the camera feed went out at around 2:13 a.m. He narrowed his eyes. Went out. Grace handed him a tablet. He tapped the security app, scrolled to the timestamp. Black screen. A gap in surveillance, almost 2 full hours. I'll have IT trace the fault, Grace said gently. But this was no accident. Jason leaned back, exhaling. His hand went instinctively to the note again. Emily's handwriting. Slanted left, with those exaggerated loops she used when she was emotional. The last time he'd seen her, it must have been nearly 7 years ago. They hadn't said goodbye. She just left. Or maybe he did, in the only way he knew how, by staying silent. He reached for his phone, typing in her name. Nothing. No recent posts. No news articles. Nothing that explained how 2 children could appear in his office with only a folded note and eyes that matched his. Then he tried something else. Emily Carter, hospital records. The system pinged back. St. Anne's Medical Center. Emergency ICU. Patient since last Thursday. Critical condition. Head trauma. Car accident. Comatose. Jason stared. His stomach dropped. Emily wasn't missing. She was fighting for her life. And these children, their children, had nowhere else to go. A message blinked on his screen. Grace had texted. Also found, hospital registration listed you as legal guardian. He reread the line 3 times. You're listed as their guardian. He stood, suddenly cold. Legal guardian. That meant she had planned this. Somehow, in some pocket of her pain and uncertainty, Emily had chosen him. Trusted him. A man who hadn't spoken to her in almost a decade. A man who once told her he couldn't be a father, not then. Not ever. Jason turned slowly and looked across the room. The boys were laughing now, quietly, as one of them drew what appeared to be a spaceship with a crooked smile. He was out of his depth. Boardrooms? Mergers? Hostile takeovers? Child's play compared to actual children. His phone buzzed again. Incoming call, St. Anne's Medical Center. He picked up, his voice tighter than he expected. This is Jason Miller. The voice on the other end was kind, but brisk. Mr. Miller, this is Dr. Leland. You're listed as guardian for 2 minors, Nathan and Noah Carter. Their mother, Emily Carter, remains in a coma. We weren't sure if anyone had contacted you. He cleared his throat. I just found out. I had no idea. There's no other next of kin. You're the only name in her file. Jason pinched the bridge of his nose. What are their options? A pause. You are their legal guardian. As of now, they're under your care. We can assist with temporary counseling, social workers, anything you need, but they're yours, Mr. Miller. He hung up without remembering what he said next. His mind was spinning. His lungs felt too tight for his chest. He walked over to the boys, sat down slowly. They looked up. The older one, Noah, he thought, smiled shyly. Are you okay, mister? Jason blinked. I don't know. Nathan held up a picture. I drew this for Mommy. But I can draw you too. Jason tried to find his voice. Do you know why you're here? The boys looked at each other. Noah nodded slowly. Mom said if anything bad ever happened, we'd find you. She said your office was in the sky. Jason managed a broken laugh. She used to say that. Nathan touched his arm, tiny fingers warm against the cold fabric of his suit. Are you my daddy? Jason didn't move. In his head, he saw her again. Emily. That soft gaze. That summer when they talked about maybe, having kids someday. And then the argument. The fear. The silence. His failure. He hadn't been ready. But now? Now there were 2 little boys looking at him like he was it. Like he was the answer to a question they'd been carrying in their small, brave hearts. He looked down at Nathan, then Noah. He felt something shift in his chest, like a lock turning somewhere he didn't know existed. Yes, he whispered. Then louder, yes. I'm your daddy. Noah leaned into him. Nathan smiled. And just like that, something unspoken cracked open. Not just between them, but inside Jason himself. The office, the symbols, the structure, the power, it all suddenly felt too small. But the feeling rising in him? That was enormous. Yes, he whispered. Then louder, yes. I'm your daddy. Emily Carter had once meant everything to him, until she disappeared. Jason stood alone in his penthouse that evening, city lights scattered like diamonds across the dark velvet of the skyline. But inside, everything felt dim. The boys were asleep now, curled up on his guest bed with stuffed animals Grace had rushed out to buy. They had asked for a story, one about a dad who finds his sons, Noah had said. Jason had frozen, then made something up on the spot. His voice had trembled. The boys didn't seem to mind. Now, silence filled the suite, and with it, memories long buried clawed their way up like ivy cracking through concrete. He poured a drink, didn't touch it. Just stared at it. And then, he opened the drawer in his desk. A box. Small. Worn. Locked for years. Inside, an old photograph of Emily. Smiling, wind in her hair, eyes squinting in the sun. He'd taken that photo at a lakeside cabin the year they were most in love. She'd been a schoolteacher then. Full of warmth, simplicity. Always talking about her students like they were tiny sparks she was trying to keep alive. He used to love listening to her ramble about them while he drafted business plans on napkins. They had been opposites. He was all fire and ambition. She was stillness, presence, belief. And then, 7 years ago, she told him she was pregnant. His world froze. Jason had been chasing a massive merger then, one that would make him the youngest CEO in his firm's history. Timing was everything. Stability was key. Children? A family? That wasn't part of the pitch deck. They fought. She cried. He shut down. And then one day, she was gone. No goodbye. No second conversation. Just vanished. Like a chapter ripped out mid-sentence. He'd told himself she probably left the country. Or maybe she terminated the pregnancy. He hadn't let himself think too long or hard about it. He buried it under board meetings, IPOs, quarterly reports. But she hadn't vanished. She had disappeared to protect something. Someone. Two someones. Jason's phone buzzed. A message from David Langford, his lawyer of 15 years. Jason, I've reviewed the guardianship file. It's ironclad. Emily designated you sole legal guardian of her children. No backups. No family. Just you. He called immediately. David's voice was calm, as always. She filed it 5 months ago. Notarized. She trusted you. Jason rubbed his temples. She hadn't spoken to me in 7 years, David. Why would she do that? A pause. Maybe she never stopped believing you were capable of more than just making money. Jason fell silent. After the call, he sat back on the leather couch. The same couch where Emily once curled beside him after long workdays, trying to convince him that grilled cheese counted as a real dinner. His walls were still lined with art, modern, expensive, impersonal. But one picture changed that now. He turned to find the boy's crayon drawing taped to the fridge. Grace had pinned it up like it belonged there. 3 stick figures, 1 tall, 2 small. All holding hands. A big yellow sun in the corner. And written across the top, in uneven letters. Our family. Jason stared at it. His hands trembled. He whispered, she never stopped believing in me. He didn't deserve it. Not back then. Maybe not now. But still, she had given him a second chance. Not with words. Not with lectures. With children. With love. Suddenly, laughter erupted behind him. Jason turned. The boys had woken up. They tumbled into the room, one carrying a blanket like a cape, the other holding a new drawing in both hands. Daddy. Nathan beamed. We made another one. Jason knelt as they ran to him, crayon marks smudged on their hands. Noah held out the picture. This is you, and Mommy, and us. We live in a castle now, 'cause you're rich. But Mommy says love makes a house, not gold. Jason looked at the picture. This one had a big heart drawn above the stick figure family. Inside the heart, someone had written, Dad. His throat tightened. He pulled them both close. The past had tried to bury him in regret, but here, right here, were 2 reasons to come back to life. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. The crayon drawing said enough. And suddenly, the boys burst in, holding a crayon drawing. This is our family, they said. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and silence. Jason stood just inside the door, unsure if his legs would carry him the rest of the way. Machines beeped steadily. A slow, almost indifferent rhythm. The pale green light from the monitor reflected faintly off the white tile floor. The window blinds were drawn halfway, letting in only a sliver of morning light. And there, lying motionless beneath a thin hospital sheet, was Emily. Her face was thinner than he remembered. Pale. Still. Her hair, once so full of life and sunlight, lay limp against the pillow. A single 4-line snaked from her wrist. The monitor traced her heartbeat like a distant wave barely breaking on a shore. He hadn't cried in years. Not when he made his first million. Not when he lost his father. Not even when Emily left. But now, he felt the crack forming, slow, unstoppable. Noah and Nathan stood beside him, unusually quiet, small hands gripping his sleeves. "She's sleeping," Nathan whispered. "But we think she can hear us." Jason swallowed hard. "I hope so." He stepped closer. Each footfall was measured, heavy. He stopped at the side of her bed and looked down. "Emily," he said softly. No response. Not even a twitch. "I didn't know," he continued, voice breaking. If I'd known." He sat in the chair beside her. The very chair where doctors likely delivered impossible news, where strangers prayed for miracles, where time slowed to grief. He reached out. Hesitated. Then, slowly, gently, he took her hand. It was warm. His thumb brushed across her knuckles the way he used to when they held hands walking by the river. A lifetime ago. "I should have come after you," he said, barely above a whisper. "I was afraid. Of being a father. Of failing you. I buried everything instead of facing what we had. What we could have had." Noah stepped closer, placing a small paper crane on the table. "We made her 100 of those. One every day she was asleep." Jason turned to him. "You've been so brave." Noah looked down. "Mom said, if anything ever happened, you'd come. She said your heart was good, just locked." Jason couldn't stop the tears now. He let them fall silently as he turned back to Emily. The doctor entered quietly, nodding to him. "I'm Dr. Leland," he said gently. "She's been stable but unresponsive. Her injuries were serious. There's brain swelling, and, the longer she stays unconscious, the harder it becomes." "Is there any hope?" Jason asked. "There's always hope," the doctor replied. "But medically, it's slim. I won't sugarcoat that." Jason nodded, jaw clenched. When the doctor left, Jason leaned in closer. His voice trembled. "You trusted me. Even after everything. You gave me them." He looked at the boys. "And I promise you, Emily, I won't run this time. I will never leave again." He kissed her hand, tears falling freely now, unashamed. For a moment, everything was still. Then, behind him, a tiny voice broke the silence. "Daddy," Nathan whispered. Her finger moved. Jason spun around. "What?" "I saw it," Noah said, wide-eyed. "Her finger twitched when you said that." Jason looked down. And there it was. The faintest movement. Emily's index finger shifted, barely perceptible, but real. He called for the nurse. Voices stirred. Machines beeped louder. Hope bloomed, fragile and wild. But Jason? He just kept holding her hand, whispering one sentence, again and again. "I'm here. I'm here. I'm here." And behind him, one of the boys whispered. "Mom heard you." Her finger moved. For the first time in a decade, Jason didn't go to the office. The clock on his penthouse wall read 7:02 a.m., usually the time he was finishing his first meeting of the day. But instead of sitting in a boardroom surrounded by charts and performance metrics, Jason Miller was in his kitchen, staring at a frying pan. "Is this how you crack an egg?" he muttered. "No, Daddy," Noah said helpfully. "You're supposed to use the side of the pan, not the middle." Nathan, still in his dinosaur pajamas, offered a serious nod. "And you forgot to turn the stove on." Jason blinked. "Right." Grace, watching from the doorway with quiet amusement, bit back a smile. "Would you like help, Mr. Miller?" He looked over his shoulder. "I think I'm beyond saving." "Actually, you're doing just fine." It was strange, this world of morning cartoons and mismatched socks. He'd spent years perfecting corporate chaos, but here, breakfast with two 6-year-olds felt like the most complicated negotiation he'd ever entered. And yet, he didn't hate it. Not the mess. Not the noise. not even the spilled orange juice soaking through his shirt. There was a stillness under it all. A kind of joy he hadn't known he'd missed. After breakfast, burnt toast, lumpy scrambled eggs, and a glass of milk shared between 3 cups, Jason helped the boys get dressed. Tying tiny shoelaces with fingers more used to cufflinks than Velcro was humbling. At 8:30, they walked to school together. No limo. No driver. Just the sidewalk, the sun, and 2 small hands in his. Other parents passed by, some in yoga pants, others clutching coffee like survival gear. And for once, Jason didn't feel out of place. The teacher, a woman named Ms. Rosario, bent down and smiled. "First day with Dad, huh?" The boys nodded proudly. Jason offered a polite handshake. "I'm figuring it out." She studied him. "You're already doing the most important part, showing up." When he returned home, the penthouse felt different. Quieter. Too clean. He walked over to the wall and stared at the gold clock that had once hung over every office he'd ever sat in. It had been his symbol of discipline. Of success. Now, it just looked like a countdown to something he no longer needed. He took it down. In its place, he pinned the boys' latest drawing, a picture of their walk to school. Him in the middle, holding their hands. Underneath, written in red crayon. "This is real life." Jason stared at the words. And smiled. Over the next few days, he learned how to pack lunches. He took the boys to the park, watched them fall and get back up. He cheered when Noah climbed to the top of the jungle gym. He panicked when Nathan scraped his knee, only to be outdone by Nathan's own bravery. "It's okay, Daddy. It'll make a cool scar." At night, they read books together. Jason did the voices. Badly. The boys loved it. Each time he kissed their foreheads goodnight, something inside him softened. He called the office only once. "I'm not coming in this week," he told his CFO. A pause. "Are you all right, sir?" Jason looked down at his flour-covered shirt. The smell of pancakes still lingered. "I'm finally learning what all right really means." Click. The next morning, he stood by the window, sipping coffee, watching his sons chase each other through the living room. They knocked over a lamp. Laughed hysterically. Apologized in unison. Jason laughed too. A full, open laugh, one that startled even himself. He picked up the lamp, set it aside, then sat down on the floor between them. "Can we draw again?" Nathan asked. Jason nodded. "Only if I get the green crayon this time." The 3 of them sat cross-legged on the floor, scribbling stars and hearts and dinosaurs. Jason looked down at the stick figure family he'd drawn. It was lopsided. Imperfect. Beautiful. He exhaled, long and slow. Maybe this mess, this noise, this love, was the real life. Not the awards. Not the titles. Not the skyscraper that bore his name. But 2 boys who called him Dad. And the chance to get it right. He whispered to himself, maybe this is the real life. Emily opened her eyes on a Tuesday morning and whispered his name. It started with the smallest sound. A change in rhythm. Jason had fallen asleep in the corner of her hospital room, arms folded, chin resting on his chest. The boys had drawn her more pictures that morning, one with a huge heart that said "Wake up, Mommy," in red marker. It was taped to the window where sunlight filtered through like soft gold. He hadn't meant to fall asleep. But when he heard the breath hitch, just a little, he sat bolt upright. Her fingers moved again. Then her eyes. Slowly. Blinking. Uncertain. And then came the word, barely audible, like wind brushing against glass. Jason. He was at her side in seconds, heart pounding. "I'm here," he whispered, gripping her hand gently. "I'm right here." Her lips trembled. Her eyes flickered toward him, as if pulling him into focus. There was confusion. Then relief. Then tears. She tried to speak, but only a croak came out. "Shoo, it's okay," he said, voice breaking. "You're safe." The monitor beeped steadily beside them as a nurse rushed in, followed by Dr. Leland. Voices moved quickly. "She's responding, notify ICU, vitals stable." But Jason didn't hear any of it. He was locked in her gaze. "Jason," she said again, more clearly now. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I should have told you sooner. I didn't know how." He shook his head. "No. I should have come after you. I let fear win. I let pride win." Emily tried to sit up. He supported her gently with one hand behind her back. "I didn't want to burden you," she said softly. "Not after what you said about fatherhood. I thought I'd raise them on my own." Jason knelt beside the bed. "You didn't burden me," he said, his voice cracking. "You saved me." She blinked. He took a deep breath. "You gave me a second chance. I didn't deserve it. But I'll spend the rest of my life trying to." Her lips curved, just barely, but it was a smile. At the door, small footsteps approached. Then two heads peeked in. "Mom?" Nathan whispered. Emily turned. Tears spilled freely down her cheeks. "My babies," she cried, arms instinctively reaching out. They rushed to her, clambering up onto the bed with gentle urgency. Jason helped guide them, careful of the tubes and wires. Emily wrapped them into her embrace, burying her face in their hair. "I missed you," Noah whispered. "I missed you more," she replied, kissing their foreheads. Jason stood back, hands in his pockets, throat tight. Emily looked up at him through teary eyes. "They love you," she said. "I love them," he replied simply. The room quieted again. Peaceful. Complete. Jason sat down beside her, one arm across the back of the bed, fingers brushing against her shoulder. Emily turned to him. "I didn't know if I'd ever see you again." "I almost missed it," Jason said. "I almost stayed the man I used to be." "But you didn't," she said. "No," he whispered. "Because of them. And you." The four of them sat there, no wires, no walls, no past heavy enough to block what was now in front of them. Family. Whole. Imperfect. Healing. Jason reached for her hand again. "I know we can't rewind time," he said. "But maybe we could start over. Not from the beginning, but from here. Together." Emily looked at the boys. Then at Jason. Then she nodded. "Yes," she said, her voice soft but sure. "With all of us." And Jason asked, "Can I start over, with all of you?" The penthouse felt too quiet, too polished, too empty. Jason stood in the center of the vast living room, the city stretching beyond the glass behind him. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline like a painting. But tonight, it looked more like a museum, beautiful, distant, and utterly lifeless. Emily was home from the hospital now. Recovering slowly, with strength returning day by day. The boys were tucked in, curled around her like vines seeking the sun. And Jason, he stood here, alone, in the place that used to define him. Marble floors. Sculpted light fixtures. Custom furniture untouched by time or fingerprints. This wasn't a home. It never had been. It was a showroom. A fortress. He ran his hand along the back of the Italian leather sofa and found no warmth in it. The only voices in this space had been phone calls and echoing decisions. There had never been laughter here. No spilled cereal, no late-night whispers, no footsteps running barefoot down the hall. Just power. He picked up a silver-framed photograph from the shelf, one of him receiving a business award. Cold smile. Crisp suit. Eyes empty. He set it down. Face down. That night, over dinner, he spoke gently to Emily. "I want to leave this place. Emily raised an eyebrow, surprised. The penthouse? It's never been home. Not really. She smiled, understanding instantly. Then where do we go? Jason hesitated only a moment. Somewhere with a yard. A treehouse, maybe. A mailbox the boys can paint themselves. Her smile grew. And neighbors we actually talk to? He laughed. Maybe even borrow sugar from. A week later, they found it. A 2-story craftsman on the edge of a quiet street. Worn brick. Blue shutters. A tire swing hanging from a maple tree out front. Nothing perfect. Everything real. Moving day was chaos in the best way, boxes labeled in crayon, furniture delivered late, laughter echoing off the bare walls. The boys ran from room to room, claiming territory with pillows and superhero posters. Grace arrived with a casserole and a grin. Didn't think I'd see you anywhere with a picket fence. Jason grinned back. I didn't think I'd want it. Emily arranged books in the living room. Jason hung drawings in the hallway. For the first time in years, every corner of his life felt lived in, not leased out to ambition. They painted the kitchen together, badly. They burnt the first batch of cookies, gloriously. Jason built bunk beds with a shaky Allen wrench and too much confidence. Emily laughed when they collapsed and had to be rebuilt. And on the first night they all sat down to dinner, something shifted in him. The table wasn't set perfectly. The napkins didn't match. One chair wobbled slightly. But the food was warm. The boys were giggling. Emily looked at him with eyes full of light. Jason raised his glass, apple juice, because Nathan had declared it fancier than wine. I've been to 1,000 dinners, he said. But I've never really come home. Emily reached for his hand. You're here now. Outside, the boys raced to the porch, chasing fireflies. Jason watched them through the screen door. His eyes softened. This wasn't the life he'd built. It was the life he'd been given. And it was far more valuable. Emily leaned against him. I never stopped believing in you, she whispered. He closed his eyes. I know, he said. Thank you for waiting. And as the kids ran outside, Emily whispered. I never stopped believing in you. Back at the office, Jason stood in front of his old chair. It looked smaller now. The once imposing leather throne that had anchored the corner of the 32nd floor no longer carried the weight it used to. Years ago, it had symbolized dominance. Control. The seat of a man who ran empires. Now, it reminded him of 2 boys, curled up like kittens, sleeping soundly where no one else dared to sit. Grace walked in, clipboard in hand. Everything's ready for the press conference. Jason nodded, eyes still on the chair. He ran a hand along the armrest, his fingertips pausing on a faint crease in the leather. That crease hadn't come from executives or clients. It came from Noah's little elbow. He remembered it now, how the boy had turned in his sleep, face peaceful, unaware that the world around him was beginning to shift. I used to think this chair meant I had made it, Jason said quietly. Now I know, it was never meant to be mine alone. Grace's eyes softened. You built a company, Jason. But now you're building something better. He turned to her. Are the cameras set? They're waiting. And the new CEO's in the wings. Jason gave a tight nod. Minutes later, he stepped onto the small stage set up inside the main lobby. Flashbulbs flickered. Reporters leaned forward. The logo of Miller International gleamed behind him. He cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming, he began. Today isn't about quarterly results or expansion plans. It's about something far more important, legacy. A pause. For years, I believed success was measured in profits and press. I worked hard. I built walls. I sat in that chair upstairs like it was a throne. He let the silence breathe. But then, 2 little boys changed everything. They sat in that chair without fear. Because to them, it wasn't about power. It was about safety. About trust. About finding their way home. Gasps and murmurs moved through the crowd. Jason continued, voice steady. Starting today, I am stepping down as CEO. I will remain as an advisor. But my full-time role now is dad. Smiles. Nods. A few tears. I'm also proud to announce the creation of the Guardian Tree Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting single parents, especially fathers, in transition. We'll provide legal aid, housing, emotional support, because no child should grow up without love, and no parent should be left to figure it out alone. He stepped aside as applause erupted. Grace brought over a small frame. Inside, a photo. 2 sleeping boys in a leather chair, sunlight falling across their cheeks, innocence undisturbed. Jason took the frame, walked slowly back upstairs, and placed it gently on the seat of his old chair. He stood for a moment, taking it in. Then he turned, walked to the elevator, and didn't look back. Downstairs, Emily was waiting, holding a picnic basket. The boys ran toward him from the sidewalk, their laughter brighter than the city skyline. Can we go to the park now, Daddy? He lifted them both into his arms. Yeah, he smiled. Let's go. As they walked away from the building, hand in hand, the glass tower behind them reflected the morning light, but Jason no longer needed it to shine. Not when he carried something better. Family. And as the door closed behind them, he smiled. Best deal I ever made.